Well, we're the Curran family, siblings of Betty and Molly Curran.
There's five of us: Hugh, Bridge, Betty, Suzanne, and Marie. We were born and reared. The last three were born in Cragan. Bridge was born in the Wells, and Hugh was born in Leeds.
Tell us about where Molly and Betty were brought up. Where did they live?
My daddy was born in the Lecky Road, 1929, and Betty was born in Hamilton Street, 1932.
And what was life like for them growing up?
Well, I'm sure life was hard enough for them growing up because nobody had anything in them days. My mummy came from a family of 13. 14 actually, one died, but 13 living. And my daddy came from a family of 5. So, like, times were hard enough then. But they struggled through, and they met in 1953 and married in 1955. Moved to Leeds for work for my daddy because my daddy couldn't get any work here. And Hugh was born in Leeds and decided they didn't like it. My mummy didn't like it and she wanted to come home. And they came back, and then they were back 2 years or 3 years when Bridge was born, down in the Wells. Then they got a house in Cragan, and I was born in Cragan, and Suzanne and Marie were born in Cragan. And that's where
When my mum and daddy lived, sorry really, when they lived in the Wales, they lived in my granny McCann's mother's house in the top floor in one room. They had one wee small room for me and Bridge, and pretty much like everybody else in there in those days, there wasn't a lot to go around. But like everybody else, my mum and daddy made do, and they did what they could.
Their best.
They did their best, and their best was more than enough.
I think that's when they kind of realised, about the civil rights and stuff like that. That they did have to live in a room in a shared house. There wasn't any housing in them days for them, so I think that's where they kind of seen that was hard times for them, and that, I think that's why they kind of became so political as well, and were part of the civil rights movement and stuff.
Certainly for my mammy, the conditions that they lived under played a big part in her politicalisation. Whereas my daddy was a Republican before that. He was a Republican from he was about 16. He met a fellow from South Derry, and he met him in the TB hospital.
That's right, with some columns.
And the guy was called Eddie Bateson
That's
from
right.
South Derry, and he gave me daddy a book to read, and the book was Dan Breen, My Favorite Parish, and I still have that book.
That's right.
So my daddy my daddy was well aware of republicanism and Republican activity even before he met my mummy. But when they suffered the hardship and the discrimination and the gerrymandering that they seen around them, and that reinforced their belief in civil rights and in equality for all.
So
That's right, Hugh.
obviously there was a particular backdrop from 68 to 72. There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
So what's your memories? Obviously you were very young.
Yeah.
But your memories of the parts that they played, or the stories that they told you about, or the situation.
Well, I remember 1969, the Battle of the Bogside. My daddy was down. He was down there 3 days, 3 nights, and one of the nights, Dr. McDermott, God have mercy on him, brought him home and said to my mammy, "Keep that man in this house. They'll be letting him back down because he was exhausted. He was down 3 days, 3 nights, and he had the effects of the CS gas, and he was put to bed and told not to move out of the house." And my mammy sent one of us up to tell him that he's giving me stunner or telling me stunner was ready. And my daddy was gone. I don't know if he came out the window or how he got out, but he sneaked out of the house and went back down to the Battle of the Bogside.
My daddy was involved from the very start. in political agitation. And then when people took the streets, my daddy was one of the people who took the streets. And that's the way I remember. We were out one night, and I was coming up to Easter, and you know we used to paint the pavements and paint the curbstones and all.
You might know.
So we were painting one night, and my daddy, who thought he was a bit of an artist, had drawn a big massive Easter lily in the middle of the road in green paint, and he did it all. Oh, it was beautiful. And at that time there was a wee hut at the corner of our street where the vigilantes all stood.
That's right.
And he came down there and have a cup of tea, and the provost came down the car and stopped, and he says, boy, some bastards after spilling this on a green paint.
So obviously
like an
one of
Easter
the
lily.
things that, I mean, your father and mother were also very involved in the cultural scene in the city, and also the photography.
Aye.
That your
Yes.
father had a vital role in that. Do you want to tell us about where that started from?
But my daddy, it was only a hobby really. My daddy was a joiner by trade, but as a hobby, he started photography, and he developed all his own photographs in the house. He had up in the attic was a dark room, and he developed all his own photographs. So it started from there. He used to take family photographs and wedding photographs and christenings and stuff. And it just developed on to anything that was going on. My daddy was out with the camera, and he's been known as being out with a camera, no matter where he was or what was going on. My daddy has a photograph of it. Hence the book that he brought out in 2015, was it? 2015. He brought out a book of all his memoirs, My Diary. And there's photos of the Battle of the Bogside and that and that book as well. So anything that was going on at all, he captured it on the camera and has all the photographs. There's thousands of photographs that he has of everything that went on in Derry.
I think he always thought it was well important as well. He was
For the
well
memories.
interested in history,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
always wanted to capture things that were happening. And there was one particular story I remember. One time I remember he was arrested. He had his camera around his neck, but he hadn't been taking photographs at the time. He was actually delivering photographs they had taken of First Communion, or whatever it was. And he came across one of the riots in the town, in the city centre, and the soldiers obviously thought he was taking photographs because he had the camera around his neck. And he actually said then later on, he'd have a few sneaky photographs, But the soldiers wanted to follow him off him, and he was fighting with them and not giving. He wanted the camera. Give me your camera. My daddy wouldn't give up the camera, and he knew obviously that they wanted to follow him. So he'd got the film out of the camera and had it in his pocket and got slipping it to somebody else anyway. But they did arrest him. They wanted the film, and he was arrested. I think he spent a weekend then in Crumlin Road jail, and I can remember him not being at home, and but not knowing what had happened. It wasn't until years later that my daddy told us the story. And there is actually
Footage.
a newsreel.
Footage.
There
Footage.
was a newsreel.
RTE newsreel.
And he was able to get a photograph from that of his actual arrest.
Of getting
So-
arrested. He was just standing there. He was a bystander.
I remember that weekend, and Eamon Malak come to the door on the Monday morning, and I opened the door, and he asked me, "Is your father in?" And I stuck my eyes up in his bed, and he said, "Oh, that's okay," and away I went, and I closed the door, and I went up the stairs, and I went into the room. Of course, my daddy wasn't there, and my mummy said, "Go back down and call Eamon back." So I called Eamon back. What Eamon was there to tell us was that he thought my daddy was appearing in court that morning, but I just assumed my daddy was in bed. So my mum and that got ready and went down to the court, and he was found guilty of riotous behaviour, and he was bound over to keep the peace for 2 years.
That's right.
Was he fined something?
I think he may have been fined a couple of pounds as well. I just can't remember the exact figure. But of course, it didn't stop my daddy going back down to any of the riots that were happening.
And the camera was still around his neck.
The funny thing about my daddy being in prison, when he went into prison, They took all his clothes off him and gave him a pajama top to wear, and he says it was a big, massive, stupid-looking big pajama top. And he asked could he have a shower, and he says, of course, you can certainly have a shower. And he says, can I have a, am I getting a towel? And the man says, aye, you're wearing it?
That's right. You're wearing it, that's right.
So I suppose then, finally, why do you think it's important that we would remember your parents?
Well, the thing about Derry people is, and particularly Republican people or people involved in struggle, I've always said ordinary people in extraordinary times, and I think that perfectly describes my mum and daddy. Extraordinary to us, but to the rest of the world, ordinary people in extraordinary times doing extraordinary things. I think my mum and daddy, like most people in Derry, seen the brutality, seen the inequality, and like most Derry people, they stood up to it.
Yeah.
And they continued to stand up for, right up until they both passed on. Everyday life was a struggle.
And it then became part of our lives as well. You
Yeah.
know, I think it's well important to capture the human story behind my mother and father as activists out in the street.
Yeah.
There was 5 children at home, and one of my memories, and it's only, I was only very young when Bloody Sunday happened, but it's a memory I'll never forget. And it was my mommy, you know, pushing her dinner or Sunday dinner. Like Breeds would have been the oldest then, so we were at home. Breeds was looking after us, my mum and daddy. They'd gone to a funeral that morning, and it was my father's cousin, and they went to a funeral, so they were at the very end of the march because they were later getting there. So at the very end of the march, and their story I've heard so many times before about Bloody Sunday, but for me the story for me and for us as weans was that picture that I still have in my head where my mama couldn't eat her dinner because she's, and I still remember saying to Breach, push the plate away from the table, and she said, I can't eat that after what I've seen in our city that day. And she just was in tears.
Tears, that's right.
You know, and that for me was a human story about, you know, and a human story I think about us as children. And how could you not? You know, why was I was a wee child asking, what's wrong with my mommy? Why is she not eating her dinner? And, you know, I suppose that's where we all then.
Their struggle was our struggle.
We grew up with that. That was part of our lives. That's who it's made us the people we are today as well, you know.
Yeah, and we'll carry it on for them and their memory. You know, it's a history that we'll never forget and would never want it to be forgotten.
But a part of that, the period that we're talking about, you know, from 68 through to 72, the Bloody Sunday time, you had the Free Dairy period, and every, well, especially in the Bog and the Craigan, the people were trying to stop the British Army from moving into the areas, or trying to stop the RUC from moving into the areas, and at night, you had the vigilantes, you had the men out in the streets, and like Hugh was saying earlier, the wee hut at the end of the street with the men with a set, and you had that on most street corners, and the women then would have made the tea and the sandwiches and baked the scones and took them out to the vigilantes at night, and my mommy done that every night. Went out with the cups of tea and the sandwiches and the buns and that. And any march, protest, rally, whatever, during that period, my mum and my daddy were at the mall.
Yeah.
And we were relatively young, so either me or Hugh would have been left to look after the rest of them. And in fact, the day of the Bloody Sunday March, it was Betty's 11th birthday, I think.
Birthday, yes.
And I wanted to go to the march, but I had to stay to look after, and Betty was having like a wee tea party, wee cake and tea, and I was left in charge, so I wasn't allowed to go to the march. Which is probably just as well, given what happened. And as Suzanne was saying, when my mum and daddy came in, and you were starting to hear wee bits and pieces about, oh, there's 2 people dead, there's 3, and then my mum and my daddy come in. My mum just said, she couldn't hear, and she said with her hands up. I remember sitting in front of the fire and her hands up and her just
Traumatized her
crying,
for the rest of her
traumatized.
life, really.
And they, when they eventually started telling us the story, it was they had told us that they had actually witnessed the first shootings on Bloody Sunday. John Johnson was shot, and my mammy went to run out to help him, to
help
go to
him.
his assistance. And my daddy pulled her back because my daddy knew what was likely to happen. But Bubbles Donaghy ran out to help John Johnson, and Bubbles got shot. And John Johnson died a couple of months after Bloody Sunday, obviously from the results of the gunshot. Bubbles survived. But that could have been my mammy. If my daddy hadn't pulled her back, realising, don't be going out there, Betty, So they talked about that then, but it was a while after, not a while, but maybe a week or so after Bloody Sunday that my mum and daddy told us that story.
I remember a good time about the battle, not the Battle of the Bogside, but the whole free dairy thing. And there was like a fla or something was happening. It was a celebration or something of flea dairy fla, that's what it was. And I vaguely remember being there around the crowds. But anyway, there's one photograph that my daddy has in our house. And it's us, we're all lined up in front of a barricade. And it's like, anywhere else in any other country they'd be lined up against a lovely a river or nice trees on in the background. But
We
here
were on the
we are,
barricade.
lined up in front of a barricade,
That's right.
I was so proud of that photograph.
That's what we grew up
That
with.
was-
That's history, and that we,
Aye.
Mm.
And Bridge is wearing her Irish dance costume, and that was the culture again. We grew up with that culture from we were no age as well. It wasn't just a new thing for our parents. They were always under their Irish culture and their Irish heritage and whatever. Well, that's just a good memory.
So it's important to keep that and keep talking about it. And this is a great idea that you have to keep it out there and keep talking about it and let people, remember what it was like.